For years, people blamed the lawsuits, they blamed the scandals, they blamed Amber Heard. But Johnny Depp says none of that started the fall. He says it began on a film set years earlier, with a director who pushed him past the breaking point. The drinking got worse after that project, the lateness followed, the spending spiraled out of control. And now, at 62, Depp is finally telling the full story. What really happened behind closed doors? And why did Hollywood stay silent about it for so long? The answer might surprise you. Johnny Depp's story begins in Owensboro, Kentucky, on June 9, 1963, when he arrived as John Christopher Depp II, the youngest of 4 children. His parents worked hard, his mother as a waitress, and his father as a civil engineer. But their life never stayed still. Before Johnny reached 15, they moved up to 20 times, and each move pulled him away from the little pieces of stability he tried to hold on to. When he was about 7, they stopped in Miramar, Florida, but even then, they lived almost a year in motels before his father found a job. Johnny later said, "Miramar felt like a place where nothing really happened, and that feeling grew inside him until all he wanted was escape. The constant moving and the lack of roots made him feel like he belonged nowhere, and it slipped into every part of his childhood. Home didn't give him comfort either, because his parents' relationship was full of tension. His mother could be harsh, and the beatings he remembered came with sticks, shoes, and even phones. By the time he was 12, the pressure became too heavy, and he turned to smoking, drugs, and even hurting himself as a way to quiet the noise around him. Music and imagination slowly became the only places where he felt safe, the only corners where the world stopped spinning. When he turned 15 in 1978, everything changed again. His parents divorced, and the split broke the tiny bit of security he had been holding on to. He had to pick up his father's weekly child support, and each visit widened the distance between them. He once described his father as kind and quiet, yet the way he left felt like abandonment. The moment the divorce settled, Johnny looked at school and felt there was nothing left there for him. Within weeks, he dropped out and told his friends he wasn't coming back. The principal did not try to stop him. Instead, he encouraged Johnny to chase what he loved. Music became the path he chose, and soon he joined a garage band called The Kids in Miramar. Life got rougher as he slept for months in a friend's 1967 Chevy Impala, playing smoky club gigs just to get by. The collapse of his family and the end of his education pushed him deeper into a life where risk and rebellion became normal, and only music made sense. His obsession with music kept growing. By 16, he was fully inside that world, playing with the kids across Florida. They opened for the Ramones, Iggy Pop, and Talking Heads, moments that made the stage feel like a home he never had. In 1983, the band moved to Los Angeles to chase something bigger, but the dream slipped through their hands. By 1984, the group fell apart before they could sign a record deal. Johnny didn't stop. He moved to Rock City Angels, played guitar, and co-wrote a song called Mary that ended up on their 1988 debut album. Even as acting began to take shape later, music stayed close to his heart. He formed a band called P, performed at the Viper Room, and released an album in 1995. Music always held the pieces of him that he didn't know how to speak out loud. Every note carried something from the boy who wanted to escape. He was 20 when he made the move to Los Angeles in 1983 with the Kids, hoping music would carry him. They changed their name to Six Gun Method, but it didn't help. By July 1984, the band split, leaving Johnny broke and uncertain in a city where broken dreams filled the sidewalks. While he tried to stay afloat, he co-wrote Mary for Rock City Angels. But even that wasn't enough to keep him standing. He needed money, and survival pushed him toward a path he didn't expect. During this time, his then-wife, Lori Ann Allison, introduced him to Nicolas Cage, a friend of her brother. Cage was already rising in Hollywood, with films like Rumble Fish and The Cotton Club giving him traction. He saw something in Johnny that Johnny didn't see in himself. Cage told him he had a natural presence, something rare, something worth trying. He sent Johnny to meet his agent, and that meeting shifted everything. It happened in 1984, just months after his band fell apart, and it became the moment that cracked open a new direction. Johnny later said acting was only supposed to help him pay rent, but Cage's encouragement became the doorway he desperately needed. Their bond stayed strong. Years later, Johnny even tried to help Cage during a financial crisis. A quiet way of returning the kindness that once changed his life. Acting took its first real step when he landed a role in A Nightmare on Elm Street in 1984. He was 21 and had barely considered acting, but chance played its part. The production team originally wanted Charlie Sheen, but he was too expensive. Wes Craven's 14-year-old daughter looked at Johnny's headshot and told her father he was the right choice. Her instinct shaped his future. He played Glenn Lance, the boyfriend of the main character Nancy, and the scene where his character gets pulled into the bed became unforgettable. The film released in November 1984 and turned into a cult classic, giving Johnny the small spark he needed to enter Hollywood. After a few small roles, 21 Jump Street arrived in 1987 and changed everything. The show made him a teen idol almost instantly. Posters, screaming fans, magazine covers, all of it came at once. He played Officer Tom Hansen, a young cop going undercover in high schools. The show ran from 1987 to 1990 and made him a household name. Even with all the attention, Johnny felt trapped. He didn't want to be seen as a pretty face. He wanted something deeper. Fame arrived like a wave, but he didn't want to drown in it. He pushed back and quietly began planning how to break free from that image. At the height of 21 Jump Street's success, he started pulling away. He begged to be written out of the show and searched for strange, risky roles that would bury his teen idol status. He wanted people to see him as a real actor, someone willing to disappear into any character. That choice led him toward Tim Burton, a director who understood the odd corners of the world. They began working together, and roles like Edward Scissorhands and Ed Wood helped Johnny shed the glossy image Hollywood had painted on him. These decisions became the turning points that pushed him toward the career he always hoped for. Everything changed when Tim Burton cast him as Edward in Edward Scissorhands in 1990. Before this film, Johnny was known mostly for his TV fame, but Burton saw something fragile and strange inside him, something perfect for the character. The film was shot in a pastel-colored Florida neighborhood, giving it a dream-like feel. Johnny spent hours in makeup every day, turning into a character who barely spoke but carried oceans of emotion in his eyes. The movie cost about $8 million and earned $56.3 million at the box office. His performance brought him critical praise and marked the start of a new identity in Hollywood. He was no longer the teen idol. He was the outsider. He was the artist who dared to be different. After Edward Scissorhands, Johnny kept choosing unusual roles. In What's Eating Gilbert Grape, in 1993, he played a young man carrying the weight of his family, and the film earned about $10 million. In Benny and June the same year, he charmed audiences with mime-inspired physical acting, bringing in over $23 million. In Ed Wood in 1994, he played a filmmaker known for making terrible movies, and even though the film made only $5.9 million, it is now seen as a masterpiece. Dead Man in 1995 earned just over $1 million, but became one of his most respected art house roles. Critics loved the risks he took, and little by little he created a reputation as one of Hollywood's most unconventional leading men. His connection with Tim Burton kept growing. Together, they created a streak of films that defined a generation. From Ed Wood to Sleepy Hollow in 1999, from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and Corpse Bride in 2005 to Sweeney Todd and Alice in Wonderland in 2010, they built stories full of strange beauty. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory alone made $474 million worldwide. Burton often called Johnny his muse, and their partnership shaped the tone of mainstream cinema for years. Their worlds were strange, dark, colorful, and often emotional, and Johnny seemed to fit into them like he was born from those shadows. As his career rose, His personal life became a storm of its own. His engagement to Winona Ryder during the Edward Scissorhands era was everywhere in the news. When they broke up in 1993, he famously changed his Winona Forever tattoo to Wino Forever. His relationship with Kate Moss in the mid-1990s brought even more attention. Public fights, tabloid stories, constant cameras, all of it added to his image as a brilliant but unpredictable figure. Johnny Depp stepped into the role of Jack Sparrow in 2003 with an idea that no one at Disney expected. They thought they were getting a clean and classic pirate, someone who fit the usual mold. Instead, Depp walked onto the set with a swagger that felt loose and unpredictable, almost like he had been drifting at sea for years. He mixed Keith Richards' rock star cool with the playful chaos of characters like Bugs Bunny, and suddenly, the whole film carried a different kind of rhythm. Even the final line he added on the spot, "Now bring me that horizon," came out of him like a whisper of freedom. At first, the studio panicked because they thought he was destroying the movie. But when the film reached audiences, everything shifted. People loved Jack Sparrow. The world fell into his charm. The movie passed $654 million at the box office, and the franchise exploded into a giant that later pushed past $1 billion. Depp earned his first Oscar nomination and a Screen Actors Guild Award, and his life changed forever. What started as a risky choice became the role that lifted him from a quiet character actor into one of the most recognizable stars on the planet. As the years moved along, his stardom turned into something even bigger. By 2012, he reached a point where he was one of the highest-paid actors in the world, pulling in $75 million in a single year. His success never came from just one franchise. He carried films like Alice in Wonderland, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and Finding Neverland, stacking up a global box office that crossed $10 billion. Studios trusted him with huge budgets because they knew his name alone could pull crowds. He even earned $68 million for 7 minutes of screen time in On Stranger Tides. It was a level of success that felt unreal. Hollywood treated him like a force. Even his production company grew into something major. And everywhere he walked, he carried the aura of someone who knew how to turn any film into an event. But behind all the applause, something darker was growing. Fame wrapped around him so tightly that he started slipping into a lifestyle that kept getting bigger and more reckless. By 2017, it came out that he was spending more than $2 million every month. $30,000 a month went only to wine. $200,000 disappeared into private jets. $75 million spread across 14 homes. He bought a 150-foot yacht for $18 million. He spent $3 million to shoot Hunter S. Thompson's ashes into the sky. His life looked grand from the outside, but the pressure of keeping it all standing pushed him toward a financial cliff. Soon there were legal battles with his managers. They blamed him for overspending. He blamed them for mismanaging his money. Either way, the truth showed a man with too much fame to control and too many habits to sustain. The spending didn't slow down. His former managers later said he was blowing through almost $2 million every month. They claimed he spent $30,000 on wine, $300,000 on a staff of 40 people, and more than $75 million on homes scattered around the world. One was a French chateau. Another was an island in the Bahamas. There were warehouses full of collectibles that cost $500,000 a year to store. There were trips, salaries, and impulsive purchases that burned through whatever he earned. By 2017, they said he had crossed into more than $40 million in debt. Even then, they said he refused to cut any of it back because he didn't want to live smaller. The whole story spread across headlines and became a quiet warning about how far a person could fall while still looking unstoppable on screen. Then came January 2017. Depp filed a $28 million lawsuit against his longtime managers at the management group. He said they failed him for nearly 17 years. He said they took unauthorized fees, handled taxes badly, and pushed him into loans with high interest that bled his accounts dry. He claimed he woke up one day and found himself in debt he never knew about. TMG pushed back hard. They said it wasn't their management that caused the disaster. They said it was his lifestyle. They filed a countersuit and revealed details about the spending in court. And suddenly, the world saw numbers that looked unreal. It became a fight that exposed everything both sides wanted to keep hidden. TMG continued pushing their argument. They said he spent $75 million on 14 houses. They said he poured $18 million into a yacht and $30,000 every month on wine. They said he paid more than $3.5 million a year just for his staff. They even mentioned a $5 million loan they wanted back. Their words created a picture of a star who couldn't stop living big even when the debts kept climbing. It wasn't just a lawsuit anymore. It became a story people whispered in Hollywood. It became a question about whether a man who earned more than almost anyone could keep track of his own life. The legal documents painted a messy portrait from all sides. His managers listed every number. They mentioned storage warehouses costing $500,000 in rent for his Hollywood memorabilia. They said he paid $100,000 a month for an addiction doctor. They said taxes had piled up until he owed more than $5.6 million in penalties and interest. These filings moved quietly across Hollywood, and little by little, they started to harm his reputation. Studios do not like unpredictability. They do not like risk. Whispers turned into doubts, and before his later scandals with Amber Heard even surfaced, people inside the industry were already saying his money problems made him unreliable. The damage had begun long before anyone realized it. The storm kept growing. Johnny Depp had met Amber Heard in 2009 during the filming of The Rum Diary, but their relationship didn't begin until 2011 or 2012, after he ended his 14-year relationship with Vanessa Paradis. What started as something tender moved incredibly fast. He proposed in 2014. They married in February 2015. Fans watched them together because their romance felt sudden and dramatic. Depp spoke warmly about her in interviews and described her as someone good for him. But inside their home, things were different. Their arguments were loud. Their tempers were sharp. Their lives were soaked with stress and substance problems. By May 2016, Amber Heard filed for divorce and accused him of verbal and physical abuse. She said he threw a phone at her. Pictures of her bruised face spread instantly, and the world reacted before either side could defend themselves. After the allegations came the restraining order. In May 2016, she obtained one, and it required Depp to stay 100 yards away from her and leave their shared home. She told the court he had a long history of substance abuse and a violent temper. His lawyers said she was trying to force a financial settlement. The divorce settlement that arrived in August 2016 placed the number between $7 and $10 million. They issued a joint statement saying neither of them intended harm and that there were no false allegations for gain. But public opinion had already split sharply. Leaked videos and images of both sides kept appearing, and each one pushed the story further into chaos. Even after the settlement, the storm didn't stop. In December 2018, Amber Heard wrote an op-ed in the Washington Post about being a survivor of domestic abuse. She never mentioned Depp's name, but everyone understood what she meant. She compared powerful men to something as large and unstoppable as the Titanic. Depp said the article destroyed his career. He said it led to studios dropping him. He filed a defamation lawsuit, and in 2022, the case went to trial. The jury decided her statements were false and defamatory. The newspaper later added an editor's note acknowledging the verdict. Heard said the ruling was a setback for women and said it cost her the right to speak openly. The op-ed became one of the central pieces in a story that kept dividing people everywhere. Leaked tapes and recordings poured gasoline on the fire. Both sides accused each other. Both sides presented evidence that showed pain and volatility. Some tapes played in court were only pieces of longer recordings. Later, Unsealed materials revealed more context, including notes from her therapist and letters that hinted at manipulation and emotional pressure on both ends. The internet then turned into a battlefield. Fans took sides and argued endlessly. One group saw Depp as a victim of false accusations. Another group saw Heard as a survivor, trying to be heard through noise and fame. Every leak, every tape, every note shaped the way people viewed them. Johnny Depp's world shifted in November 2020, and it happened so fast that even Hollywood struggled to catch its breath. A UK judge named Mr. Justice Nicole ruled that the Sun's claim calling Depp a wife-beater was substantially true. The case rested on 14 alleged incidents of domestic violence against Amber Heard, and the judge said 12 of them had happened, including one in Australia where Depp cut his finger and used the blood to write messages on a mirror and even a lampshade. When Depp's team appealed, hoping to overturn it, the court rejected them and said the findings were based on a detailed review of the evidence. The verdict landed like a shockwave because it did something rare. It legally attached a label to a global celebrity. Depp's lawyers called the decision perverse, but the judge said Heard had been the victim of sustained and terrifying assaults. The graphic details spread across the world, and suddenly, the private horrors of their marriage were everywhere. That ruling didn't just stay inside the courtroom, it rushed straight into his career. Right after losing the case, Warner Brothers asked him to step down from the Fantastic Beasts franchise. One moment he was playing Gellert Grindelwald, and the next he was packing up, even though filming had already started. Depp later said he felt like the studio wasn't only removing him from one movie, but quietly pushing him out of Hollywood entirely. For a franchise that planned multiple sequels, losing that role was a heavy blow. It told the rest of the industry that Depp had turned into a risky investment. Around him, old things began coming back to the surface. The restraining order. Heard filed in 2016, and the UK findings were already damaging him. And now this firing created a feeling that his career could collapse faster than anyone expected. Hollywood doesn't like uncertainty, and Depp had become a wave they didn't want to ride. Yet, before the UK case even happened, Depp had already opened a different fight. In 2019, he filed a $50 million defamation lawsuit against Heard, saying her 2018 op-ed in the Washington Post destroyed his reputation. She countersued for $100 million, claiming his team had run a smear campaign against her. The op-ed didn't mention him by name, but Depp said everything in it pointed directly at him. When the trial began in April 2022, it turned into a global event. Millions watched the live stream. People on every corner of the internet took sides. Witnesses spoke about Depp's drinking, drug use, and chaotic behavior. Others painted Heard as the aggressor. Evidence poured out about their violent fights. When the jury finally reached a decision, they sided with Depp. They awarded him $10 million in compensatory damages and $5 million in punitive damages, later brought down to $350,000 because of state limits. Heard won $2 million for one of her counterclaims. It wasn't balanced, but it wasn't one-sided either. Still, the world saw it as Depp's comeback, and he said he felt like he had finally taken back his life. That trial became one of the most watched legal battles in recent history. For 6 weeks, the jury listened to stories that felt impossible, yet somehow real enough to hurt. Witnesses described a house filled with shouting, broken glass, and wounds both physical and emotional. Depp's texts about violence became headlines. The story of Heard allegedly throwing a vodka bottle that severed his finger spread everywhere. The phone-throwing incident came back too. It all blended into a painful mix the world couldn't look away from. Every moment turned into a clip. Every clip turned into a meme. And every meme shaped opinions in ways the court could never control. When the verdict arrived, the internet erupted. The difference between how the story was treated online and how it was written in legal documents became part of the conversation. But the jury's outcome stood, and it changed the direction of Depp's life in a way that could be felt immediately. After the verdict, Depp said the jury had given him his life back. Supporters celebrated. Studios watched from a distance, trying to understand what this meant. He won $10 million in compensatory damages and $350,000 in punitive damages, and Heard received $2 million. Even with that, the victory was seen as his clearest path toward rebuilding his career. Heard said she was disappointed, saying she had provided enough evidence but couldn't overcome the public pressure. Meanwhile, Depp used the moment to step back into the spotlight. His public image began to rise again, and parts of the industry started to soften their stance, wondering whether they had moved too quickly when they distanced themselves from him. In the larger conversation, the verdict became a marker in the Me Too era, showing how complex accusations can become when the public, the media, and the courts all collide at the same time. But there was more behind his decline than just these cases. Depp had been developing a reputation long before the scandals. On the set of Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Men Tell No Tales. In 2017, his chronic lateness caused massive disruptions. Crew members waited for hours. Extras sat around with nothing to do. Disney and producer Jerry Bruckheimer had to discuss how to work around Depp's unpredictable schedule. One crew worker was assigned to track him so they could warn others when he might arrive. People on set blamed drinking and personal struggles, and these habits slowly made him harder to insure and more difficult to hire. The stories grew more intense as more productions came forward with similar issues. Those delays didn't come cheap. Films like the Pirates sequels and The Lone Ranger were already expensive, but Depp's habits made them far worse. Pirates reportedly spent around $2 million per month, and much of that went toward covering lost time and overtime when Depp didn't show up. The Lone Ranger reached more than $225 million in cost, partly because of delays tied to him. Disney executives grew frustrated. They kept adjusting schedules, extending contracts, and pouring money into problems they didn't want. It became a quiet conversation in boardrooms. Is Johnny still worth it? Some said yes. Many began whispering no. On top of that, Depp's box office power had already dropped. Films like Dark Shadows in 2012, Transcendence in 2014, Mordecai in 2015, and even Black Mass in 2015 underperformed or flopped. His former agent, Tracy Jacobs, later testified that his star had dimmed. She said she warned him about his late arrivals, his behavior, and his substance issues, but nothing changed. The decline had started long before Amber Heard wrote her op-ed. The trial didn't invent his downfall. It simply exposed what Hollywood insiders had been saying quietly for years. His personal troubles blended into his work. Reports from sets described drinking and money fights becoming part of his daily life. His business managers even sued him for unpaid taxes and commissions, leading to millions in penalties. Critics noticed a difference in his performances too, saying he sometimes looked unfocused or distant. All of these threads tangled together and created a feeling that the old Johnny Depp might never come back. When the legal battles began, Hollywood realized these problems weren't new. They were just becoming public. Producers and executives already knew about his behavior. They already knew about his money issues. The trial simply brought it all into the open. What once lived in whispers now filled courtrooms, newspapers, and social media timelines. The downfall wasn't sudden. It was a long slope, and the world finally saw every crack. But after the 2022 trial, Depp began rebuilding somewhere far from Hollywood. He headed to Europe and stepped into music with new energy. In June 2023, he joined Hollywood Vampires for a 6-city European tour through Germany, Luxembourg, Munich, Hamburg, Berlin, and Mainz. It was his first big public moment after winning the verdict. Fans greeted him like they had been waiting for him to come back. The shows sold out fast. He even released an album with Jeff Beck called 18 in July 2023. The tour didn't just revive his spirit, it rebuilt his connection with fans who never left him. Then came his return to cinema. Jean Dubarry opened the 76th Cannes Film Festival on May 16, 2023. Depp played King Louis XV in a French period drama set in Versailles. It was his first major role in 3 years. The premiere was full of cameras and whispers. Critics were split. Some liked the performance. Others questioned why Cannes gave him the opening slot. Still, it marked the start of a slow walk back into serious acting. At the same time, Depp discovered a surprising success in art. In July 2022, his first collection called Friends and Heroes sold out within hours. 780 prints sold for about £3 million. The gallery's website even crashed. In 2023, his new portraits of Bob Marley, Heath Ledger, and River Phoenix earned another £4.5 million in a single week. His work mixed pop art with emotional details, and collectors rushed to buy it. Even outside of movies, his name pulled crowds. As he stepped further from Hollywood, Depp talked openly about feeling shunned. He said he had been cancelled and left behind after Heard's accusations, but he also said he felt strangely lucky to have escaped the pressure of mainstream Hollywood. He told reporters he now preferred smaller projects, music, and art. The man who once earned more than any actor in the world no longer wanted that world in return. He sounded tired of the old system and ready for something new. Then, by late 2025, the comeback became real. Depp accepted the role of Ebenezer Scrooge in a dark adaptation of A Christmas Carol, set for release on November 13, 2026. It was his first lead role in almost 10 years. Paramount gave him a $10 million paycheck for it, his biggest in years. Hollywood insiders started calling it a make-or-break moment. If the film worked, Depp could walk back into the industry as a leading man. If it failed, some believed it might end his revival. More roles surfaced soon after. He joined Terry Gilliam's Carnival at the end of days to play Satan, with filming expected in 2026. He also signed on to Day Drinker with Penelope Cruz. These projects signaled that studios were willing to gamble on him again. They hoped his global fan base, especially in Europe and Asia, would bring money back to the box office. It felt like watching someone climb after falling from an impossible height. Depp didn't stay quiet during this time. He called himself the crash test dummy for the Me Too movement. He said he had been targeted before the movement gained speed. Supporters believed his comeback showed cancel culture wasn't final. Critics argued it showed how easily powerful men returned. His trial became part of a bigger conversation about what accountability means in Hollywood. Even with the comeback, his image stayed fragile. One rumor or one lawsuit could break the new ground he stood on. Studios knew it. Fans knew it. Depp knew it too. Every project became a risk. Every headline carried weight, and every move shaped how people viewed him.